Bring in our next guest here of this hour, Richard Gordon, political analyst. Thanks so much for being with us on Live Now.
Well, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
So, for Richard, what is Americans most going to be looking at for this debate? Is it going to be on the economy issues, immigration? What are you going to be looking at for some of the big takeaways that we could possibly see between these two candidates?
Well, for people like me, this is like the Super Bowl. So this is a very exciting day. I think different people are going to look for different things. And it really depends on where you sit and what your vantage point is. And I think for people, first of all, I think a lot of this is baked in already. I think a lot of this is people who support Trump are going to see things one way, and people who support Harris are going to see things another way. And I think that is baked into it. But, Donald Trump has three major issues he cares about: immigration, inflation, and crime. Now, the truth of those three issues is a little bit different than he's going to portray tonight. He's going to portray, crime is way up. He's going to portray that inflation is out of control, and he's going to portray that immigration is, the border's just being flooded. The truth of the matter is crime is down massively, and inflation has come down seriously in the last year or so, and that immigration has slowed as well. Harris has a completely different point of view. I mean, she has the issue of trying to be it's a tough line. She has to balance herself as the loyal supporter of Joe Biden, whose numbers are tremendously underwater, with her own vision for the future. And what she needs to be doing is portraying a vision of America long into the future and showing why she's a different person and independent of Joe Biden. And for her, it's a real opportunity to introduce herself to the American people, because so many people, she was vice president for 4 years, she was a United States senator, attorney general. People don't know her, and people have no real idea what she stands for. I find that a little unusual because she's been talking a lot about issues. But if you look at the numbers, as I have, the public is not picking up on that. 28% of all the people don't know enough about her. 48% of the people who haven't decided yet don't feel they know enough about her. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that really is. And let's talk a little bit about something else that is so intriguing when watching presidential debates. And it's not always what is said, but it's the body language aspect that a lot of people are going to be looking at tonight here. And what are you going to be looking at for when it comes to body language of Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, when they are on that stage?
Well, that's a really good question. Look, people don't really know the vice president, right? They're trying to understand who she is. And what they're going to be looking for is, am I looking at the commander in chief? When I'm watching my TV tonight or when I'm streaming it, am I looking at the commander in chief who could go toe-to-toe with Putin and Xi and could defend the United States? And she needs to look strong, and she needs to look tough, and she needs to look ready. And that's what her body language is. Donald Trump is a very known commodity. Almost everyone knows who he is. Only 8% of the people haven't formed a judgment of him. His body language is always the same. I mean, there's a lot of strength, there's a lot of bravado, and that's what works for him. If you look at young people, young men, a lot of them like him because of the strength he projects. And I think you're going to see that tonight. The way he stands, he's a tall guy, he's 6'2", he'll lean on the podium, he'll look at her, you will see a lot through the body language. She needs to look tough, strong, in control, ready to be commander in chief. He's going to be the way he usually is, which comes across very powerfully to a lot of people.
Let's talk a little bit about the preparation that we've been hearing for the last several days. Kamala Harris and her team working through a debate prep. And for Donald Trump, a little bit different. Doesn't really take in that mock, if you will, debate prep mock situations there. Very much different going into it. Now, he has taken a lot of questions from the media, from news conferences to other sit down interviews. Kamala Harris, very different approach for that campaign. Really is trying to stay away from the media right now, has only did that one sit down. So, how is the prep going for both of these candidates going into tonight?
Very, I think, Mike, I think you really hit it. I mean, very, very, very different. Kamala Harris is a lawyer. She's used to being in court. She's used to prosecuting a case. She is dealing with this as if she were about to stand in front of a judge, and she is. She's about to stand in front of 300 million plus Americans tonight. I don't know how many will be watching, but she will prosecute her case. Her preparation is intense, deep, and going through every possible scenario. I heard she spoke to President Biden. I heard she spoke to Secretary Clinton about their preparation and things to be prepared for. Donald Trump doesn't handle things the same way. Now, look, let's just be honest about this. There's a huge double standard here. I mean, part of the double standard is we're dealing with a man and a woman. And always, when we've had this situation, always, in the two presidential campaigns and then in governors and Senate races, there's always a double standard as how people hear a woman versus how they hear a man and the way a man has to present himself vis-a-vis a woman. So you have that whole dynamic going on. But, the other thing is people are going to be looking to the vice president to be very detailed. They're going to want to hear a plan for the future. They're going to want to understand in detail what she wants to do and where she wants to take the country. Donald Trump, on the other hand, doesn't have that burden. First of all, he was president. We kind of get it. Second of all, he talks in really large platitudes and he's going to do something about immigration. He's going to do something about housing. We got to do more about crime. Well, Harris can't get away with that. And so Harris has to be very detailed because the public won't allow her to talk like that. With Trump, we all know that's how he talks. He doesn't ever get to specifics. Harris, they're going to want to see specifics. How does that translate into how you prepare? Well, it translates into Trump doesn't need to prepare in the same way that Harris does. Trump needs to prepare in very broad generalities, doesn't need to know a lot of specifics. He's going to talk about how she's a super liberal. He's going to talk about how crime is on the moon. And she's going to have to turn around and say, you're wrong. You lied 28 times last time. You're lying now. Crime is down significantly. So she needs to know facts. He needs to know very broad concepts. That's just how they deal with it. And that's how the public looks to each of them and expects them. If Donald Trump starts talking specifics, one, I don't think anyone's going to believe him because, he sometimes makes up numbers. But two, it's not what they look for in him. They look for a style more than they look for a substance.
And Richard, lastly here, I wanted to just briefly talk about how the mics will be muted, just like how we did see with Biden and Donald Trump the first time around. So these mics will be muted when the other one is speaking. And we saw back in 2020 when they weren't muted, and you had those moments of when Donald Trump just kept on interrupting Joe Biden. And we saw that a lot. It really plagued much of the debate because you really couldn't concentrate. And then when you look back at the vice presidential debate back in 2020, we had Kamala Harris speaking a lot of the times to Mike Pence saying, it's my time to talk, my time. We won't have any of those really interactions today. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out with the muted mics once again.
Well, I think that's a really, really good point. I wish my mic was muted so I wouldn't have to be listening to this dog barking. But forgetting that for a minute, the muting of the mics, it's so funny, the unexpected consequences of things. I understand why Joe Biden wanted the mics muted because Donald Trump is such a distraction. However, for Harris's point of view, she wants the mics to be on because you called it a distraction and whatnot. It was a major distraction. But if you look at the first Biden Trump debate, his constant interrupting, his comments, his braggadocio, his bombasticness said to the American people, oh my God, could we deal with this for another 4 years? He came off at the first debate, and if he could pull this off again tonight, he's going to be in great shape. Because when you think about what they're fighting for a sliver of a sliver of a sliver. The polls are almost dead even. If you look at the numbers right now, 538 has Harris winning, I think, 281, something like that. The Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, of which I'm on the board, has it at 270, 268. So they're fighting for a very small group of people here. And by having the mics off is a tremendous advantage to the former president, a tremendous advantage. And you're right. It cuts back. You referenced the Mike Pence, the comment that Kamala Harris said to Mike Pence, which was, "I'm talking now," which was, I've said this before. It's like a wife scolding her husband, and every woman in America understood exactly what was going on. That was a huge advantage to her. She needs a moment like that tonight. She needs a moment where she turns to him and says something like, I've heard enough of this from you. I've said before, I think that moment is when he mispronounces her name. She could correct him, or she could just look at him and say, "Look, I know you did it intentionally. I know why you did it. You're trying to belittle me, but it's not going to work. We've seen that before." And I'm going to call you President Trump because I respect the office of the presidency, and I'd appreciate it if you called me, Madam Vice President, because that's my office. Don't respect me. We have to respect the office. And I think she needs a moment like that. She needs a moment, for example, when he says something like, "Oh, she's just so liberal, she's whatever." She needs to be able to turn back to him and say, like Reagan did, "There you go again. Same old, calling me a liberal." Well, the facts are, I'm not. And here's my record. And she needs to get into that. With the mics off, it's so much harder to pull off. It really is. I understand why she wanted the mics put on. As a listener, just as a person at home, it's better to have the mics off because of that. But as a tactical tool, my goodness, you want the mics on from her point of view.
Yeah, so many people will be watching, and it's always debates, presidential ones, highly unpredictable, and we'll be looking for those moments that will have a big time splash on the headlines tomorrow all over the news, whatever it may be. But Richard, thanks so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox, giving us some great insight on what to look for a little bit later tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Me too.